A man voluntarily goes by the name He-Man. His enemy is a floating skull in a purple hood called Skeletor. His allies include someone named Fisto, someone named Ram-Man, and a robot voiced by Kristen Wiig. The villain's plan involves something called the Sword of Power. None of this is played ironically. And somehow it works. Masters of the Universe is the most fun I've had in a cinema this summer. Here's the setup. Prince Adam was separated from his home planet of Eternia 15 years ago when Skeletor attacked the kingdom. Raised on Earth, going by Adam Glenn, completely ordinary. He spent those years trying to find the Sword of Power that was lost during his escape. When the sword resurfaces, he returns to Eternia to find his world in ruins, his family fractured, and Skeletor in complete control. He has to embrace his destiny as He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe, to save everything he loves. It's a hero's journey, an uncomplicated one. And director Travis Knight, the man behind Bumblebee and Kubo and the Two Strings, has made the smartest possible choice with it. He has committed to the material completely. No winking at the audience, no embarrassed irony, no "can you believe we're making this?" Just a filmmaker who looked at the inherent ridiculousness of He-Man and decided that ridiculousness deserves to be treated with the same craft and conviction as any serious fantasy epic. This is the first live-action He-Man film since the 1987 Dolph Lundgren version, which sits at 21% on Rotten Tomatoes and is remembered primarily as an accidental comedy. Travis Knight looked at that legacy and decided to do something completely different. He was right. Let me start with what this film gets genuinely right, and it gets a lot right. Nicholas Galitzine is a legitimate movie star, and this film proves it beyond any doubt. He looks exactly like He-Man should look. And before you dismiss that as shallow, understand that when your character is literally called He-Man and voluntarily wears a furry loincloth and a chest harness, looking the part is foundational to the entire enterprise. But Galitzine does more than look right. He plays Adam's earnestness completely straight, finds real comedic timing inside the sincerity, and carries the film's emotional weight, multiple father-son dynamics, a hero's journey that actually lands, without letting the inherent camp swallow him. Dolph Lundgren himself said Galitzine was perfect casting. Dolph Lundgren, the man who did it first. That's the endorsement you want. And then there's Jared Leto as Skeletor. I did not see this coming. I want to be honest about that. Leto is unrecognizable, in voice, in movement, in every frame he occupies. And his performance is delightfully theatrical in exactly the right register. Not scary exactly, but posturing, preening, convinced of his own grandeur in a way that makes you understand why the people of Eternia are genuinely afraid of him while also making you laugh. He's the embodiment of toxic masculinity rendered as a purple floating skull, and the film is completely aware of that and completely committed to it. It's his best work in years. Idris Elba as Man-at-Arms brings a genuine emotional grounding to what could have been a functional role. His relationship with Tila is the film's beating heart, and Elba plays the guilt and love of a surrogate father with a realness that cuts through the fantasy spectacle every time. Alison Brie as Evil Lynn is clearly having enormous fun. Kristen Wiig's voice performance as Roboto gets the biggest laughs in the film, while she's only on screen for minutes at a time. Daniel Pemberton's score, with a guitar contribution from Brian May of Queen, is the best possible version of what the movie's music should be. Enormous, bombastic, 80s inflected and completely unashamed about it. The production design by Guy Hendrix Diaz is vivid and imaginative. Castle Grayskull looks exactly like it should, and Eternia has a genuine visual identity that never feels like a generic fantasy world. Travis Knight has spent the budget on screen and you can see every dollar. Now here's where I have to level with you, because it's not all by the power of Grayskull. 141 minutes. That's too long for this film. The Earth-set opening act, necessary for establishing Adam's exile, overstays its welcome by about 15 minutes before Eternia arrives and the film truly comes alive. And even within the Eternia sequences, there are stretches where the plot mechanics of a franchise setup become visible and the film starts feeling less like a complete story and more like an expensive pilot episode. You can feel Amazon MGM wanting sequels in the DNA of certain scenes. And that impatience to establish a universe before properly establishing this one is a recurring problem in blockbusters right now, and this film is not immune. Skeletor, for all Leto's theatrical brilliance, is also never genuinely menacing. The film commits so fully to the camp that the actual threat he poses to Eternia never quite registers as real danger. Deep Focus Review specifically called out that there's no tension because Skeletor is never all that frightening. And while I think that's too harsh a verdict overall, the point is fair. The best fantasy villains are funny and terrifying simultaneously. Skeletor is mostly funny. The competing tones also don't always find the balance. At its best, this film is Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, fun and sincere and self-aware in just the right measure. At its worst, it can't quite decide whether it's a children's film or a knowing adult comedy, and the awkward middle ground loses some of the magic. Here's where I land. Masters of the Universe is not a perfect film. It's 20 minutes too long. The villain needed one more genuine scare moment, and the franchise machinery is occasionally visible beneath the spectacle. But it's exactly the summer blockbuster that summer blockbusters are supposed to be, and haven't been consistently for a while. Colourful, committed, genuinely fun. Full of performances that are working harder than the material requires, because the cast clearly decided this was worth taking seriously. Travis Knight has done something harder than it looks. He's made a He-Man film that works for children who've never heard of Eternia, for adults who grew up with the cartoon, and for everyone in between. The Hope Core energy, the film's absolute refusal to be cynical, dark, or ironic about its own premise, is the rarest thing in modern blockbuster filmmaking. It is the movie's greatest strength and its most deliberate choice. Knight looked at a floating purple skull villain and decided to give him everything. I'm genuinely glad he did. I'm giving Masters of the Universe a 7 out of 10. Take the kids, take yourself, and stay through the credits. You'll want to. Like the video if this helped, subscribe for weekly reviews. And the only question that matters in the comments: did you have He-Man toys as a kid? Because this film is basically a love letter to everyone who did. And I want to know if it landed. See you next time.